inside my body.
Yeah.
And so I went to my my crazy house. I went to give this word, and I could only stay there an hour. I was like, my friend of mine, you know, she goes from party to party to party. Well, that was me that day, right? And I only had an hour here, an hour there, an hour, and I never do that. But so I went to this, and because at my house church, they have like 8-hour meetings. I don't have time for that. So, you know, they talk for 3 hours, and then they get down to business, maybe, you know, for 2 hours, and then it really gets good, but then I have to go. So I was like, listen, I got an hour here, and I got to release this, because I felt like I was like tingling, and I was getting ready to explode. And because I really resonated with what he said about being muzzled, and how he had to go away and find out who he really is. Because I feel like that's happened. I know that's happened to a lot of people, but it's part of my walk with the Lord, that people always want to cut the edges off of me because I'm too much or too whatever, or what I'm saying. You know, you can't speak to angels. I'm like, well, I did. Okay, you know, and then get slammed for it. And this was a long time ago, like 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. And so I really resonated with that. So I just went to this house church, well, leaders meeting. It's all just whoever wants to come, and release this word. And I left, and one guy's crying, the other guys were, I mean, it was so, and I left, and they were all just like, and so I went to the next thing. I don't know, it was just, even when I went on Sunday morning to pray, I just went up and saw this lady who, I hadn't seen her in a long time, and she has ALS, and I didn't recognize her, and I just went up and touched her, and she immediately, her physical body did something. I mean, people like, you know, when you touch them or lay hands on them, they'll you know, it's nice, but her body just went, and she looked at me, and she you know, because she's kind of out of it, you know, she's like, I love you, and she looked at me, and she went, yeah, and she could, I thought she could feel it. And so it, as weird as it was, because he's always weird anyway, he's always out there. I mean, he's just like, he's like buzzing around like a little
Yeah, sure. I mean, personally, I mean, I didn't have any issues with what was being said, because it was all language I understand. You know, we're all talking about frequency and vibration, the fact that everything is energy, and yes, everything is now going to go from a particle to a wave, and I mean, totally understand all that. There was no issue with it whatsoever. I just feel I would like when people share things, that they actually shared something that meant more than just there's something going on, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. Because if there is something going on and you actually know what it is, why are you not saying?
Right.
You're almost maybe like, you know, it's like either don't mention that you know something, because it's almost like you're setting up some sort of Gnosticism or a hidden stuff that some people know and some people don't. And the reality is, if you know and you're authorized to say, then say. If you're not authorized to say, then don't say. Because all you do is just create a weird dynamic of words that don't actually have an explanation.
Right.
I mean, and actually, okay, is there physical things going on Mars, Venus, and Jupiter, or actually are we talking about spiritual representations of things that are under the earth? Because the reality is, Satan's trophy room is a spiritual dimension. We call it under the earth. Right. It's not actually a physical place. You know, there's, and so explain what you mean. I don't like when things are left in almost like this esoteric sort of thing where you said something, you've sort of created an interest in people, then you've not really explained anything, because there was nothing that was an explanation of anything that was said, even though there was a lot said. And none of it I
Right.
disagree with. You know, it's none of it I disagree with whatsoever. But tell us something which is actually tangible, rather than a whole load of statements that indicate there's a lot more to know without actually giving any of that knowledge. You know,
Did you
and
watch
that,
the next session?
no, I only heard the one session.
I heard that the next session was the two of them, Justin and Jason, tag teaming. And
Right.
I heard that was really good. And that might have been a little bit more informative. You know what I mean? To
Yeah.
kind of lay it out. I don't know if that's why we need you. We need you to cut it all up for us so we can
Yeah.
read it.
Well, yeah. I mean, but I guess that, yeah. I mean, that is where I would come from. You know, I mean, I always share that I'm on a journey with some things and I'm uncovering. I mean, you know, I understand that there are a lot of mysteries that we can't put words to yet. But those mysteries that I have got, then I will definitely put some words to them, because that's what I feel called to do. You know, I won't hide them from people or package it up in a way which makes it sound so mysterious that no one can ever get to it. You know, and that's my problem. I think there's a lot of stuff out there at the minute which has truth in it, but is packaged in such a way that it makes it so hard for people to actually really engage with it. And
Right.
I believe that, you know, there's a mixture in some things which the truth is the truth. So let's get the truth, because the truth that we know will set us free. But if you package it in such a way that no one can understand the head from the tail of it,
Right.
it's very difficult for people to embrace the truth. And that's why I struggle with some things and ways things are expressed, because it actually makes it more complicated and
Right.
harder for people to embrace it, because it's not presented in such a way that it makes it easy. You
I
know,
think
and
you're hitting on something really important, because I think that part of the problem, and I think I'm dealing with that too, is that um, just the woundedness of sharing like who we are and the things we know, but not being able to really explain it. I'm the kind of person that I don't ask questions. I don't ask scripture. I just feel like it's a go, and I'm down the road, and then turn around and go, oh, okay, that's what that was, right? And
yeah,
somebody said, oh yeah, you get the manual later, because I'm like, I don't even ask questions. I just feel like this is the Lord, and I don't. And so that's part of that's why I resonated, because sometimes I'm saying something, and just like you're saying, I'm not giving kind of a context, and I think the Lord is dealing with me right now, and a lot of people who have had those forerunner things that haven't been able to explain them, like what you're saying. And so really like bringing Jason out and just dealing even with my insecurities of sharing things, and because I can resonate with what he was saying when he's like, I don't know, because I've been muzzled before, right? So that creates this weird, do I share, do I not? It's a weird kind of place,
yeah,
and that's what I'm dealing with right now, because the Lord's saying speak,
yeah.
and I'm like saying I don't have everything. It's like hard to
Mm.
defend what I'm saying.
Sure, but there's a difference between sharing testimony of your experiences than actually explaining something to somebody so they can experience the same thing. Because one
Right.
opens the door for people to say, "Wow, I'm interested to find out more," which is fine. The other one opens the door and then helps people to walk through it, and then explains what's on the other side of it once you've gone through it. And you have to have both. You know, I've shared testimony which I know people don't understand, knowing that something in their spirit will resonate towards some of it, and then hopefully they will be drawn onto the journey that we're going. My problem is where it's shared in such a cryptic way that it makes it so mysterious to people that they just turn off. You know, it's almost like, oh, too weird. Uh, no, and people would accuse me of being weird in some of the, things that I share, I guess, but at least I try and bring it into words that if they are expressible, then I will express them. If they're inexpressible, I will say, I have seen mysteries that are inexpressible and I cannot put them into words that we would currently understand. Now, to me, that makes at least sense of the fact that there are things out there that we don't yet understand. It doesn't package it in mystery. It's just saying that there are a lot of things that I've actually seen in the spirit that I cannot explain right now because I haven't got the words to explain them to you. But there are things there. So there are mysteries that are going to be unveiled. Let's be open for those when they come. That's not dressing it up in language which makes it so mysterious that it almost like promotes the person as this wonderful insight into the things rather than, and the rest of us can't see it. It's like, I think there's just some ways in which things can be expressed that almost put the emphasis on the wonder of the person who's got this revelation rather than the wonder of God, who is the revelation. And where is the focus? That it's almost like my intellectual knowledge of this subject, because I'm writing it in 50 pages when it could be expressed in 4, package it up in such a way that most people wouldn't even get beyond page 4 because they would have been lost by now. Right. That I don't find that very helpful. It's just not. It doesn't resonate with me at all. Now, when it came to obviously, being untethered or released from, untangled with the things that are affecting us, I've got no issue with that.
Okay.
I've done my own untangling stuff and been set free from connections, but okay, but now what? Because if you don't know what it's done, how are you going to know what to do?
So tell me what it's done.
Well,
because I feel like sure. I was a little. I'm not out in the planets and stuff like that. So all that stuff was a little. You're right. It's cryptic, and I didn't really want to know more. I was just thinking, is this right? And but then when all the untangling started to happen, and I felt something switch. Well, not switch, but it felt like this felt like something tangible happened, like in my physical body, and that was enough for me to go, wow, okay, because I've been in places where you eat the meat, you chew the bones, and you throw the rest out.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I got no problem with that. In a sense, I've got no problem with anything that was said or anything that was done. There was nothing there.
That's what I was wondering.
No, I got no issue with any of it from the point of view of I have also experienced those things. I've also been free from those things. I've been out into the planets, out into the galaxies. I've been shown how to birth something out there. I understand that, but I also put that in the context of our government, that we are as sons of God, releasing the creative abilities of God to bring government to those things that we're responsible for. So, and I understand that there may be a soul connection to the frequency of things that are of the created order that we need to be free from so that we can be reconnected from a higher spiritual realm so that we can bring authority into it and we can govern. And I have no problem with that whatsoever. It's just where things are shared in such a way that it makes them so mysterious that people
that you can't attain it.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, don't drop things out if you've got no intention of actually explaining what you mean. I don't find that helpful for me personally. Okay, there's stuff going on Mars. Okay, well, what? Rather than say there's stuff going on this and that on the other, actually give us an example that we can hang something on that will give us, now I understand the spiritual things that are going on in there because I've engaged some of that.
Do you think that maybe it's because half the people at Justin were people in my group, from Vancouver.
Yeah.
And they have a grid, but everybody else didn't even have a grid. Didn't even have a grid of heaven. And so it could have been something like in Seattle. It's around this area. Nobody knows this stuff. Nobody has a grid. Nobody, you know, it's all there's. I'm trying to lay a grid, you know, with the help of the Lord, and
Sure.
it's you know, my evening group, I wanted to cap it at 12, and it's 25.
Hmm.
I had 4 people come up because I said, don't tell anyone. I want to have a small group, and I had 4 people come up and say, oh, I hear you're doing a group. Can I join? And I'm like, who told you I had a group? People aren't supposed to be telling. You know, Jesus says, don't go tell anyone. The guy ran in the city and told everyone. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no. But you see, what's happening is
because most of the people were lost. I know most of the people were going, what?
Yeah, yeah. But there is a sense where the sound that's being released from heaven and which is coming through us is attracting people. Those that the Spirit of God is preparing, that their spirits know there's more. Their heads don't know, but their spirits is telling them, and they're being drawn towards something. That's the people that you're beginning to engage.
Right.
And that's because there's something. They don't know what it is, but they know there's something. So they're willing to engage it to see. And that's fine. You know, I got no problem with that. But there's a sense that, when Ian Clayton does teaching, and he sticks to his subject, then it's good. There's revelation in it, and you can process it, and you can get the truth, and you can outwork it. When he's on machine gun form, and he goes to a place, and he's only there a day or something, and he just basically fires out a whole load of stuff, seeing if a bullet will hit somewhere, it's very difficult for people to grasp that. If they do get hit by a bullet, then they may well pursue something, because that hit me, that something got me there, and there's something in this, I'm gonna seek it and go after it, which is fine. But you know, for me it's like, I'm gonna do what I'm mandated to do. So if I'm mandated to release information or revelation about something, then I'll do it. I wouldn't go into a meeting and just let a whole load of stuff out and then not follow it up, because I'm not authorized to do it. So am I authorized to take this process through and give people the revelation they need to be able to do something with this? Or is it just a whole load of things which there's no real connection to? You know, so
right, because then people can't grasp. They can't grasp what you're even talking about. That's you know, I like the manual, because I think it you know, it starts you can kind of do the Doug Addison thing where you know, you locate somebody, and then you can plug them in where they need to be plugged in, you know. It's some people are grasping quicker than others. Some people are running, some people are, you know, hesitant. And it like the first Ian Clayton conference that I went to, I got so drunk the first night, but I was done before the conference even started. I could have gone home, you know. I went up and met Justin and Jane and thought, and fell out and made it was just a chaos mess in the aisle trying to go back to my seat, and I was like, I can go home now, you know. And then it was crazy, and just listening to the DVDs, I would listen to them and get half, but now I can listen to them and get every single. I'm like, oh, I got every single thing. I understood every single thing.
Yeah.
So the process of, you know, the overwhelming back then and now is things start to get stabilized, so you can, you know, move on.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I guess, horses for courses, and you know, I don't know the context of that conference or what it was designed to do. I mean, the name of it sounded like it was designed to do some governmental thing, but I don't know. I guess I've been untangled with a lot of stuff already, so I you know, and that stuff which I, you know, completely unaware of. In one sense, I don't know whether, you know, I've had so many spiritual encounters with the Firestones and different things in God that, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's been, you know, burnt out of me, in sense. So, you know, it didn't have a dramatic effect. Although I was open, and you know, I you know, quietened myself to engage with anything that needed to be, that I needed to be free from, you know, and connected. But I want to make sure that I'm reconnected to establish the government. You know, it's like this dimension. We are called to have dominion,
Right.
and we're then going to learn how to have dominions over the other dimensions and everything else that there exist. So this is our, you know, place. So we need to bring the earth back into its rightful place within the spiritual realm. You know, so I know that there are things out there which have an effect on that, and we need to deal with them. You know, I have read those untethering prayers, and I know Ian is talking about untethering people, you know, from the wrong frequency, but it's their soul which is really tethered,
Okay.
you know, rather than their spirit, and therefore, yes, we need to be free, but then we need to be reconnected. We just need to be reconnected at a different level, a spiritual level of authority, because I want to bring the frequency of the earth back to its rightful frequency. I don't want it to be resonating at B flat, and you know, and every black hole be producing a sound which is crying out for the sons of God to be released. You know, I want to answer creation's groan with the correct frequency flowing out of my life, and help other people to do the same, so that we can establish government. You know.
He said something interesting about the old creation and the new creation. I mean, I wasn't quite understanding what he said. Is he saying that, you know, he was untangling us from old consciousness, old mindset, all that stuff? I mean, I get all that.
Yeah.
But then he made reference to that's the old creation and the new creation, and he connected us. Is that true?
Well, I think, trying to simplify it, if you think of it as, you know, I'm a new creation in Christ, but to embrace that new creation in Christ every day, I have to not follow the free will pathway to choose the pathway of the knowledge of the true good and evil. I have to choose to follow the right path. I am a new creation.
I felt him talking about, you know, new heavens and new earth, and you know, when Jesus returns and all that, and I was like, is he alluding to that?
Well, in a sense, again, yeah, even have a theological understanding of new heavens and new earth, the language, the whatever it is, apoloptical, I can't even say the word, yeah. All that language, you know, has many expressions. So when the temple was destroyed in AD 70, the old covenant system ended, and it was a new heaven and new earth. You know, so we're, in one sense, we're in that new heaven and new earth, because we're in that new covenant expression.
Okay.
So I'm not expecting, you know, in a sense, that's already taken place from my perspective. We will go into a new age where this realm will come back into its rightful place.
Okay.
Do I believe that this whole universe is going to be burned by fire? No, I don't, because I think that the perspective that will change when it's brought back into its rightful place within the heavenly spheres of government, if you like. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people will have benefited from those prayers. I mean, I've got those prayers. I mean, that's not the first time I've seen those prayers or you know, heard them. You know, I've seen those prayers, and I know it's important that we are free from anything that holds us in bondage, and it's the truth which sets us free. I'm just not convinced that there was enough truth in what was being shared to bring people into freedom, other than bringing them into more confusion or seeing it as such a mystery that they'll never ever hope of finding out. Because
I had a sense that when Justin came, and he, for me, it's a lot of what I do is about the land, and so the Lord seems to have me do something in the land, and then he'll move me on, and I'm like, well, what did I just do, you know? So I never really know what I do, but then sometimes I get to see. but I know it's important. And so one of the things that I was seeing was that Justin came, and that first night, and I've listened to Justin, but a lot of people that I brought haven't, and they were, they just were rocked. But that first night he kept saying, "Am I in England? Am I in England? You guys are so stoic." And so he started breaking off this slumbering spirit, and that's what lies over the area, and the spirit of distraction. It's like, I've seen it as like a spider web, and there's a big spider, and the spider comes in and puts his little needle in you, and you go right to sleep. And we were doing that in the house of prayer, wake up, for 3 years, every set, that's what we would do. We'd hit that wall, and we were doing it from the other side, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can do worship in the throne room, but if you don't have that, and so I kind of gave up. And so when he started doing that, I started crying. I thought, oh my God, I stopped doing that, and I felt like he came and he broke something, even though it was in Longview or whatever.
Yeah.
And then Jason came, and I felt he did something, because he started doing the same kind of thing. They said they started doing some, I don't even know. One of my intercessors is a Native American, and she said they started, when they were tag teaming, they were doing some government with the natives in the land, and repenting and do that. And that's what we're getting ready to do for the Galactic Council. We met last night, and we're starting to formulate our case. And I came together and I said, well, who has the case? It's like, that's how we're going forward. Because I asked Wisdom, I said, can we do this next year when we know a little bit more? And she goes, sorry. I'm sorry, this is important. She goes, I know you don't know what you're doing, but it's okay, I do. And I'm like, okay, that's all I need. As long as, things start to, and it got really, we were unified. And so everybody's going out. We're going to do it from, I think it's 2nd Chronicles. I have this scripture where I learned in Bible school where, I can't remember who it is, he presents a case to the Lord, and he starts out and he says, you're God, you're so kind, you're so faithful, you brought us out of Egypt, all that stuff. And then he goes, but this is what's happening in the land, and then boom, he makes decrees. And so that's how we are gonna formulate it. That's why I wanted to talk with you a little bit, because we're going to get principles, the word of God, of who he is and who he says he is, and then we're going to present what's happened in the land, because the land here has been defiled by blood of the natives, and then do decrees. I went to church on Sunday, and I had this frequency going on in my body. Every time I think about something, I just go, and I thought I was going to like bulk out like the Hulk, and anyway. And so there was a guy, my Native American friend, she's a caregiver of this guy, and he's in a wheelchair, and so I went over and touched him, and he just looked, he's so kind. Oh my gosh. He just looked at me and he's like, and I was asking the angels to come and heal him, and I heard them say, we can't. And I'm like, what? I'm like, why not? They go, the land's defiled. And I saw how what we're going to do is going to create something, and it's going to alleviate something so that this realm and this guy can get healed. That's what I was seeing.
Yeah.
And I started crying. I thought, oh my gosh, what we're doing is really important, because I don't really have a concept for. I just go and do stuff and then go, oh, okay, that happened. But the consequences of it, and actually doing that and making the land undefiled, what does that even look like? And so, anyway, that's how we're moving forward. Is that right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, you have a case based on the character and nature of God. Then you deal with the legal rights that the enemy has, and then you decree what will be
Okay.
from the will of God and the purpose of God, having removed the legal rights. See, most people just make the decrees without removing the legal rights, and you have to do that on the other side of the veil. All the work done in terms of spiritual mapping and all that stuff, great, but they didn't know how to go beyond the veil to do a higher level court. So they were doing things in prophetic acts here without having dealt with it in the spiritual realm. And that's really where I think we have to get smart in now we have access to that realm. We can do things in a different dimension. And yeah, I mean, you know, I'm doing exactly the same thing. I'm preparing a case right now for the Galactic Council, and you know, and so far I've just got 2 pages of, you know, woe is me stuff. On the basis of, and this is why the judgment of God is going to be released, because, okay, but actually that judgment will be in favor of those who embrace the truth. You know, it's not God is going to release punishment on anybody, but judgment is coming, and that judgment will be in favor. So God is going to make a verdict, pass a decision. So how can he do that? Well, okay, here's the case against, this is the case for, and we're going to deal with everything in the middle so that we can bring this about. And so, you know, and I think there will be different cases according to different things. You know, so when there's a physical location, then you have to deal with those physical things. You know, for me, if, you know, looking to deal with something which has an effect for the whole church, you have to look at, you know, what's the enemy accusing the church of? And there are some pretty serious accusations, and he's absolutely right.
Right.
I mean, let's face it. I mean, you're up in the Seattle, you know, you're up in that northwest. You know what happened in Seattle last year, in terms of what happened with the implosion of a sort of major church thing up there. You know.
Oh yeah, right.
You know, well, that is a result of what God is doing in preparation, because he's bringing those things that do not look like him into the light.
That was amazing. That was shocking.
Yeah, but there's going to be an awful lot more shocks, because God is going to pass verdict. This does not look like me. I'm leaving.
Right.
Now, the great thing would be if they embraced something that did look like him. You know, rather than that which was modeled after a top-down, I'm top of the mountain, you know, I rule,
right.
Rather than, no, I'm the bottom and I release people. I don't control people, I don't manipulate people, I release people into their destiny. So it's not about me, and anything which is those old Moses ministries,
right,
which is setting people up as those that rule and cover and provide the covering. It's like they're going to be exposed, and God is going to leave. And there is going to be a lot of that going on.
Okay.
Right? Because God does not want things out there that does not look like him.
Right.
You know? And up till now, there's been grace to repent and to change and to embrace the new order of things. 40 years. I mean, we've had 40 years, you know, of the call to call people into intimacy and calling people into friendship with God, and those who are stewards. And when I read some of the things that had gone on in that place and how it was such pressure to perform and to get results and all that stuff, it's just like, there it is. Stewards, faithful stewards, not friends.
Right.
God does not want faithful stewards anymore. That is past. He's calling people who've been faithful to come to another level of friendship and to embrace him in intimacy, which will then take us to another level of governmental authority, so that we can actually then reflect heaven on earth. You know, we need the 4 faces of God functioning. We need the order of Melchizedek in kingly, priestly function to create an ark to form the full apostolic and prophetic government, which is the foundation, not the covering. You know, the mountain is reflected, and therefore those Moses' ministries, which I would call them, of the Moses generation in the wilderness, have established mountains that they don't want to leave to cross over into the promised land. You know, and that is where the challenges are coming. You know, the challenges are coming, and you know, we need to get on it really, and get ready. And you know, I desperately want people to hear that call and come into intimacy,
right,
and stop being good stewards of that which is no longer in the purposes of God. You know, it's like,
it is interesting.
You know,
it is interesting. A lot of people in my groups are getting rid of old mindset and old religious ways of doing things, and
yeah.
I won't let them call me their leader. I won't let them call. I won't let them call. I won't let them even suck from me. Right? I won't.
Yeah.
It's like I put up my boundaries because they're starting to understand, because I'm facilitating sons growing in maturity.
Yeah.
So you know, I know the group's grown. We started in like May, and they were all asking me questions, and I would go out of the room and nobody would talk, right? And so, because I like to go out of the room to see, because I always thought that was like a good way of, when I was learning about house church and all that, you know, if the pastor can leave the church and it functions, then you've gained something. And so so that we were at my house a couple of weeks ago, and I went to the bathroom, and they're all talking and teaching each other, and I thought, okay, now we've attained something. Now we're not looking to a person, because we've looked to a person for so long, even to get a word, to get revelation, to instead of asking the Lord, you know, in intimacy, like we can go and do mobile course and do all that stuff and da 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 and do, you know, do the busy work, even in heaven, you know, and go and then come back out and not have that intimate connection. So I'm starting to bring it down to, you know. And I think it's good, the first love. I mean, that whole intimacy thing, it starts there. It doesn't start with, okay, what am I going to do? What do I got to do there? And go there and do that. And
that's why the pathway of relationship is key to establish. Because if that pathway is not something that we walk on, and it's the pathway that is ours, then it's always going to be, I will get my identity out of what I do rather than I do from my identity. I only do that which lines up with my identity and my destiny. I don't need it to give me validation. I don't need to do anything to create this image that other people can say, wow, because actually I'm me, you know, and I'm me in relationship with God, and that's where my acceptance, my approval, my affirmation, my significance comes from. My relationship, whether I do anything or not, is not the issue. It comes out of that intimacy of knowing God personally by experience, and not just knowing about him. Because if you know about him, you will only know about him from the projections that are actually presented within the Word of God. And depending on what you read in the Word of God, you can get a totally wrong view of who God really is.
Right.
You know, well, he's a God that commits genocide. Okay, well, if you take it out of context, that's how it can appear. You know, and therefore it's so difficult to know God from the Word, which presents him in many different ways. You have to know him in personal experience that, of course, aligns with the character and nature of that's revealed in the sort of fullness of the Word, but it's personal, and how he relates to me is personal to me, and he'll relate totally personally to you and to each person based on the fact that he's uniquely created us and has a vast sum of thoughts about us, and he wants to reveal them to us so that we can be secure in our relationship with him, in intimacy and relationship. Then we're not striving to please him, because that will get us brownie points, or that'll make us feel better because, oh wow, or if we don't do anything, oh no, what's he going to think about me? We always know what he thinks about us because we know his thoughts about us, which I love. You know, there is no negative thought about us.
Right.
So we can embrace that relationship, and then that will lead us into the outworking of sonship. I'm
It is
not
a
a son
process
because
of
I do
breaking
son
that.
things. I'm a son because he called me his son. And if I never did any son things, I would still be a son because he called me a son. You know, it's not defined by what I do, but all religion is defined by what we do.
Right.
And we have to come out of religion into relationship, which is defined by intimacy.
And that's a process.
Yeah, it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
And we become more and more intimate, but you have to have the first embrace somewhere. You have to encounter the reality of it in experience. It cannot be intellectual knowledge. It has to be actual spiritual encounter, which will bring our emotions and our body along with it. You know, and I think that's really where I can smell religion a long way off. You know, and I can smell that which is creating people who are stuck in performance and are fearful if they don't do, and places that will create that performance and create fear, because that will control and manipulate people into performing, generally for the benefit of the leader. And that is not what we need. We need those that are actually stood on the leader, who can give them something solid in which to present them into their relationship with God with no mediator. You know,
Right.
because as soon as we are between God and people, we are mediators. And that is an old covenant system.
That's
We
nasty.
must be those that give access to people to engage God without coming through anybody else. Jesus is the only one we have to go to come to the Father, not through someone else, which is why he said, don't call anybody Father on the earth. Because what that will do is set up another mediatorial position of a priest on the earth. And we don't have priests on the earth anymore. They don't exist. And anyone who calls himself such is actually going against what Jesus said. Because there is now only heavenly priests who are now a royal priesthood after a different order, not after the Aaronic order, who operated on this side of the veil. Priests do not operate on this side of the veil. The priesthood is only a true priesthood when it operates on the other side of the veil. And that's why we got so much problems. Because the majority of people are operating on this side of the veil, and therefore they must stand between God and man. And that has created the problems that we've got.
Right.
You know? And set up the systems that we've got, which keep people in their places rather than releasing them into their destinies. And it's, you know, it's being exposed. Yeah, and it's going to get more and more exposed, and people are going to have the choice. You know, you need to walk away from this if it's not in helping you engage in intimacy and in your heavenly place as a son of God. Otherwise, what are you? You're someone else's son. And that's what has been set up, whether they call themselves apostles or prophets or pastors or whatever. Essentially, if they're above you in any hierarchical structure, then they are your apostle, your prophet, your father, and in reality, that means God can be neither of any of those things towards you because you've substituted someone else.
Right.
So there is no substitute than God. How can anyone substitute for God? But all the religious systems actually make substitutes.
Right.
We have to engage the actual person of God and experience him and get all that we need, all the needs that we have, and those needs are built in by God for significance, for acceptance, and for approval and affirmation. but they come from God, not from other people and not from what we do. So I don't have to earn them. They come in relationship. And the more I know the person, then the more I feel affirmed and know that I'm affirmed because I know the person. And I know he does not affirm me because of what I do. He affirms me from my eternal destiny out of his heart that he always had as the image that I would be conformed into. And when he doesn't recognize that image, he has to say, depart from me, I don't know you. Even though you might have prophesied in my name, set up 50,000 churches around the world, set up 50 apostolic ministries, or whatever you might have done, I don't know you. You know, because you don't actually look like that which I created you to be. And the image which is on your scroll of destiny, you have wood, hay, and stubble that you've built, and not gold, silver, and precious stones. And that's what's coming. Now, we want people to embrace the relationship with God, which frees them from all that, you know, and
right.
You know, God has been wooing people.
Yeah, it's a hard road. Well, it's an interesting road because especially here where you have a few people who, you know, and there's even for that, even for the intimacy. I'm like, where were you guys when IHOP was doing all that priestly and learning, you know, audience of one? You know, I'm like, where were you? You know, what's IHOP? I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, we're like in a time warp here. Some people are like stuck in the, I don't even know. And because I'm the director of the House of Prayer here, and we're not really a house of prayer. We just we do differently. We do a little bit different. And so we have these worship nights, and so I got asked to do worship at my house, my little crazy house church, and before we started, the Lord goes, "This is going to be a little different tonight." I'm like, "Okay, all right." And so I had bought this new guitar, and it's an electric guitar, and I hooked it up to this amp, and it can go wah wah. You can make all those, you know, really cool sounds, and so I felt the Lord wanting not me to lead, but the people to engage and to lead, because I've always had this vision of, you know, the musicians following the people,
yeah,
and not just, you know, we're not here to guide you somewhere, and you know. I used to have to just go, okay, you guys don't want to go, I'm just going to close my eyes and bye-bye. But now I try to engage a little bit more and take people with me. Anyway, so for about an hour, all I did was play one chord. And I was looking at, I had two people on my team, and I looked at them, and I went, I can't play anything else. And she's like, okay, we'll just go with that. And what happened is that everybody started to engage, I mean, really deeply. And they started to lead me, right? So I was just kind of following them. And they did it for kind of a long time, maybe 40 minutes, and then they got tired. And I'm like, are you guys tired? What, are we stopping? Is that it? Is that all we got? Well, we might as well just go home. You know, and I was like, I just stopped in the middle of it, and I just went, is that all we got? 40 minutes? Really? And so then they started up again, and we went into another little thing. And it was interesting because I stopped and I went, wow, that was interesting. And one guy came up and he prophesied over me, and he explained exactly what just happened. He saw what happened, and I said, yeah, you're right. He goes, you didn't know you weren't going to lead worship. And I said, well, yeah, I kind of did. But so it was an interesting moment that the Lord had me just, because normally we kind of, you know, pave a way, and I try to get people, we take communion and we get engaged and step in and all that. I mean, that's how we're starting to do it. And people get fatigued really quickly. In France, I remember in France, we used to go for 4 hours. I mean, we would go 4 and 5 hours, and we'd look at our watch and go, oh, we gotta stop. You know, it's like 1 in the morning. Where did those 3 hours go? Because we'd gone somewhere. And I just find it interesting how, because I'm normally running down the road, and the Lord's having me turn around and have, not teach people, but kind of guide people in how to just engage. You know, engage in that place in the simplest form. And I find people get really tired really quickly. Like, you know, 10, 20 minutes of and I'm like, we just got through the door.
Yeah, but you got to understand that you are used to the weight of the presence of God when they engage, and they're not. We had the same thing here. When the presence of God really started to come and the weight of that presence increased, we entitled it TWOMP, the weight of my presence, and literally people couldn't stand. You know, like in the temple when the glory cloud came, they couldn't stand to minister, and that's what it was like initially. But we got spiritual muscles, we got stronger, so that actually it says in Jude that we should stand in the glory.
Right. Yes.
To be able to minister
I don't
in
want
the
to be
glory.
a lightweight.
You know, and but that takes some effort, you know. And it's like, you know, Superman had all those abilities because on his planet the gravity was so strong that when he was on our planet it was like, I can fly, you know. And when the weight of the presence of God comes and his glory starts to manifest, those who aren't used to it do get fatigued. They do get, they don't know how to stand and then go through it into the dimension that it's leading into. They get stuck in under it rather than engaging through it into more. But people do get
because I was wanting them to propel and fly.
Yeah. But the atmosphere is so heavy that they can't get off the ground because they've not learned how to go through the portals to go through that into the realms that it's opening up. It's like they're just going through the veil, and literally that's what it is. It's the veil that feels so heavy because you know, and the veil obviously was quite thick. You know, in the literal temple into the Holy of Holies, the veil was really thick. And so it was very, very heavy. And when people get to the point where they're in the veil, it feels really, really heavy. But actually you go through it and you come into the freedom of what's on the other side of the veil.
Okay.
And people get stuck in the veil, and sometimes our whole meetings are the veil because we've not yet gone through into the realm of heaven, or heaven has not come through, has overlapped. In a sense, we're not superimposed as we will be more and more.
Okay. Yeah.
But it is, you know, for those who are in the veil, it is a very heavy place, and it is quite tiring, you know, because they're not used to it. The people's bodies are not used to what it feels like to be in that veil, in that sort of overlap place, really. But we grew in it. You know, our musicians, they're now used to ministering in that. When we first started to engage it, they would struggle to stand up. You know, they were like, you know, but they got used to it. So, and it's not getting used to it in a wrong sense of like it just familiarity with it, but actually no, they've got stronger that they can minister in that weight rather than crumbling under the weight, you know. But they've had to learn how to do that, you know, and also people had to as well, you know. So we have much less people.
He like after half an hour, I look over and he's on all fours. I'm like, stay. I'm like, you gotta learn how to, you know. I looked at him. I said, lightweight, stand up, you know. Because we used to get so much glory in France that I was such a lightweight, I'd be on the floor, and I was like, I want to learn how to minister in this. I want to stand in it, and it. You're right, it's muscles. So the next time when I feel that, I'll I was like, why why are we getting fatigued? You know, and so
Yeah, probably because you've not gone through the veil, and you've just been.
right. Well,
Yeah.
that group is a little bit they don't really have a grid. Like when I do the worship nights at VHOP, like the last one we had our last hour was so beautiful. I was so undone. The beauty of God came, and you could taste it.
Mm.
I mean, it was the sound that was happening. I don't even know how we were doing that. The sound of it and the beauty. I was just sitting there crying my eyes out for an hour, and I stopped playing. I just was listening to what was going on, and we kind of, as a corporate thing, I felt we took off in a spaceship. We just, because people who had never had encounters were starting to see chariots, and this one lady was like, "Oh, I was flying in this thing," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's right," you know. And but the other group is a little more. They don't have a grid for heaven yet.
All right.
I mean, the concept is, you know, kind of when I die, or you know, heaven's up there somewhere, you know, that kind of thing. So
Okay.
it was their first taste, and everyone was like, "Ooh, that was so good." I'm like, "Okay, that's like the little tiny hors d'oeuvre, right?
Yeah.
That's the little hot dog. That's the olive."
Awesome.